We joined early too and overcame some technical mishaps through human innovation. So through human beings touching buttons. So for us, we are looking at a slightly different experience, but I believe the audience is just seeing both of us. And that's what I want this podcast to be about, right? Is I want it to be about, two tech guys talking shop right now. And next week or next month, I think it is, when we've got our next one scheduled, we'll have another guest from an Israeli tech innovation area, and we'll focus on this. So Jeremie, welcome to the show. You are number one. Right? You are the first guest on the trial of this podcast that we've ever invited. So let's do this. Please introduce yourself. Tell us where you work, and let's assume the audience is mostly Western, mostly US based. Tell us where you work and why you work there.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. It's a big pleasure being the first one here, being the cobaye, being the trial. But I am very excited. Well, a few words about me. I'm 43. I was born in Paris. I do have this accent that you may recognize, of course, but moved to Israel over 20 years ago. And funny enough, a lot of people here call me veteran of the Israeli iTech with my French accent, which is funny, but I use it and I actually make sure I preserve my French accent because this is an asset. I've been going through a lot of things. Today, I work for an organization called Startup Nation Central, which is technically an NGO, a non-profit organization based solely in Israel. We have over 75 employees, and we're mapping the Israeli ecosystem of innovation, helping large corporates around the world to engage with Israeli innovation. We identified specific sectors to focus on. We like to start with big challenges around the world and look for solutions in Israel, because Israel is a place, and we'll discuss in detail, it's a place of solutions looking for problems. And that's definitely our focus today, is to leverage the tremendous ecosystem of innovation to connect to the world and make sure things happen. That's our role.
I like that. A place of solutions looking for problems. Is that what you said?
Yes. That's what it is.
All right, let's we're going to get into the technology, but you've already piqued my curiosity. So you grew up in Paris.
I grew up in the north of France, moved to Paris at the age of 10 until the age of 21. Yeah.
When did you move to Israel? How old were you? 21?
I was 21. Yeah. It was
okay.
in 98.
Why? Why did you move to Israel?
Well, it's a big question. I've been, you don't move for the same reason that you stay. So I need to go back to the shoes of this 21 years old kid in order to remember why I moved. I moved mostly because of what I had in mind of Israel. I was also I'm Jewish, I'm Zionist, although I'm not religious, and I did have this dream of creating my own life, probably like a lot of teenagers want to do. And Israel was already starting to be the startup nation, although it was not named.
What year was this, roughly? What year?
98.
Okay.
It was the beginning, maybe, of probably the first big success in Israel. Of course, Checkpoint was already there. But the big, I would say, mass success for the average Joe would be ICQ. If you remember the instant messaging, ICQ, it was invented in Israel and it started exactly at those times. So this was the very first startups I heard about and attracted my, I would say, curiosity.
Okay, so let me pause you right there. I want to keep going on in your chronological journey.
Sure.
Okay, so I hadn't actually heard of ICQ. So this is interesting. I would imagine so yes, you're right. Checkpoint started in 1993, right? So Gil Shwed invents the firewall. Really big deal. That goes around the world like on fire, right? But it's not a consumer product. So that's probably why the text thing grabbed everybody's attention, right? Because the firewalls, no one knows about them. If everything's going well, no one thinks about cybersecurity.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
But text, we're using every day. So tell me about that. So you heard about this thing with cell phones that was invented. Give me that story real quick.
Oh, it was before the cell phones were smart. It was really an online messaging system like MSN Messenger before the time. And it was actually then acquired by AOL. But this was really considered in Israel as like the the first real startup with a real exit in the 2.0 world, you know, in the and
Right.
so this was founded by a person called Yossi Valdi. And it's funny because back then it was like, for me, a person that I will never be able to meet and everything. And today I have like twice a week a conversation with Yossi, and he became, I would say, like the godfather of the Israeli iTech, and the founder of ICQ. But so back then I had the dream of meeting this ecosystem, starting to learn about the leading players, but mostly the idea of having technology driven businesses. That was actually what attracted me in Israel a lot. So yes, that was the early beginning.
How do you spell the guy's name? Yossi, how do you spell it?
Valdi, Vardi.
V-A, okay, so hold on. Y-O-S-S-I, yeah?
Yes,
And then
yes. Valdi, Vardi.
A-R-D-I. I'm just going to look him up here because that's amazing to me. So
It's the first name to place on the paper if you talk about the origin and the inception of what became the Israeli ecosystem of innovation today. It's probably the first person to put. No, it's not this Yossi. This is an entrepreneur.
okay,
It's
hold
another
on.
one that I know him actually, and his startup.
Okay, this one?
Yeah, you see the next one after. Yeah, no. Yossi Vardi, the one afterward. Conversation with Yossi Vardi. This is the right one for sure. Actually, you mentioned now Godfather of the.
And you call this guy the godfather of Startup Nation. Do you know what's funny? I call Gil Schwed the founding father of cybersecurity. Isn't that, it's an
What it
interesting.
is. He
Yeah.
invented the firewall, so there is no doubt about it.
So this guy right here.
Yes, he is.
Interesting. It's funny I can't find his profile, but anyway, yeah, I'm going to look him up later.
He's not on really active on LinkedIn anymore. He's organizing a lot of things. He's chairman of a few dozens of events every year around the world, and he has a community of tens of thousands of people that bridges around the world.
So he created texting.
He created texting and the small story. And if you ask him, he will tell you his stories with Jeff Bezos and his stories with the Chinese. He will tell you that a small company imitated ICQ with a very similar name. I think it was QICQ or something like that. And this company, actually, he asked this company to change their names, and they renamed to Tencent. And actually, the Tencent that created WeChat, which is today one of the largest internet companies in the world, they actually started by imitating ICQ. So he has tons of different stories about and small anecdotes of this world from 20 years ago.
I tell you, I want him on the podcast. Absolutely. I'm reaching out to him right after this. That'll be an amazing conversation. Yeah.
Happy to make an introduction, of course.
I didn't quite understand the what he got these companies to change their names, and it's one of the largest internet companies. Explain that one.
Yeah. So actually, he has more the detail because this is something you may find on the internet, but it's something you will hear about him on the one-on-one conversation because he's not bragging about anything.
Okay.
But yes, the idea is that there was a small Chinese companies that created the exact same messenger like ICQ. The small, maybe people here, some in the audience will remember the ooh, which was the messaging sound for when you get the message from ICQ. Maybe you remember that. Maybe you don't remember. Maybe the cauliflower, I think it was logo of ICQ. A lot of people will remind it, and they copied both the logo and the name in China. And then he went there, tell them, listen, you have to rename your company because this is too one-to-one copy of what we've been doing. And they renamed it to Tencent. And Tencent is widely known today as being one of the largest internet company in the world. It's a Chinese company. It's the leader there. And it's a leader around the world because they have assets everywhere. They are invested in many US companies as well. And, yeah.
Well, listen, I would be remiss of our audience. I'd feel like I couldn't do another podcast if I didn't go down this path that we've now just opened up. China and espionage and industry and intellectual property. Let's go there, right?
Perfect.
I mean, TikTok, hello, look what's happening in the news in the US right now. So, this is really interesting to me. I mean, I'm in cybersecurity, so I am aware of the dangers of all social media being able to take data and use it for nefarious purposes. I'm also aware that, social media companies like the Snapchats of this world, how do they make money, right? It's a free tool. And whenever, let's say I occasionally go into my children's school and I'll do a little cybersecurity thing once a year, right? And then when the kids realize, people are spying on us, I like to say, well, that's kind of like the cow complaining how the steak gets served. You're the cow, right? Mm-hmm. And these media companies, they have to make money. So obviously what they're doing, and it's genius, really, they have allowed humanity to self-curate and put knowledge up. Look at LinkedIn. Everybody puts up all this personal information on LinkedIn. The amount of hacks and social engineering through LinkedIn blows my mind. But we're not going to stop doing it because it's a very powerful tool. So, that's an interesting story. I mean, what is... not that you represent Israel, my friend, but your personal opinion then. What is your opinion of the dangers of espionage, specifically through TikTok, for the world? And what is your take on the current environment of, it's difficult to divorce politics from reality in this endeavor. Give us your thoughts, man.
Well, in the nutshell, I don't really know the inside of TikTok and the structure of and these are things I think we don't really have visibility on what is happening inside the works in the forces in work. What I can tell you is, of course, cybersecurity and security and confidentiality is a huge challenge today, and Israel is facing those challenges for many years. Israel is the most targeted country in the world in terms of cybersecurity attacks, attacks, and of course a lot of expertise was developed in Israel. Although I don't think, and that's just Checkpoint, it's used by 100% of the Fortune 500 companies in the world. There is not a single company that doesn't use those products, and it's not only Checkpoint; it's many other startups coming from Israel. So what I'm saying is, of course, there is a big challenge, but we also developed an expertise which it's looking forward. Today, the specificity of the challenges that we have, 25 years ago, it was about securing the perimeter. It was about antiviruses. And today, it's more about making sure data can transfer securely. That you can predict and or find some social engineering attacks. So people that get your password, they seem legit, right? Mm-hmm. You have companies like BioCatch that can actually detect the fact that the person typing on your keyboard is not the same hands as the usual hands that we're used to see. So that's actually biosignature of your behavior. So it's new challenges that actually come, and Checkpoint is also engaged on those paths. But what you see is not Israel, I would say the traditional security becoming commodity, and Israel being at the forefront of the new security, which is really about making diagnoses or inquiries after the attack. You see your data outside of your perimeter. How did this happen? I need to find how it happened and make sure I can reestablish the scenario that made it happen. So this is an example of challenges that people are facing today that are quite new, and where Israel is still a leader.
So I want to dig into this, but I think we need to do a description. We haven't done a description of Startup Nation really for the actual corporation for the audience. So let's actually touch on that, and then I'll bring us back into this dialogue. So talk to us about what is Startup Nation Central? Like, it's a corporation, right? Because there's the famous book. So distinguish us from the book Startup Nation and what you're doing at Startup Nation Central.
Okay, perfect. So there was a book that it all started with the book wrote by Dan Senor and Paul Singer, and Saul Singer, sorry. Saul Singer and Dan Senor. The book is called Startup Nation. It was released about 10 years ago now. It's more than 10 years ago. And the book actually triggered some interest from some large donors that found in this book a messaging to place Israel as solving large problems for humanity. And so and Dan Senor works for a large hedge fund based in New York called Elliott. And the owner of Elliott his name is Paul Singer, and he decided to actually start a philanthropy to help the world and leverage Israeli innovation. And that started from that. So it's separate from the book. But today you do have you do have, um, uh, I mean, we're not a corporate, we're a non-profit organization, NGO. We don't have a portfolio of startups, we don't have government money, and we don't have a P&L at all, since our founders are covering all of the expenses. And so we have total freedom of being able to focus and give feedback, objective feedback to whoever is looking to engage with Israel.
So what's the name of the guy that runs the hedge fund? What was his name?
Singer.
Paul?
Singer.
S-I-N-G-E-R?
S-I-N, yeah.
Yeah, Paul Singer, hedge fund. Okay. Is it this gentleman right here? That guy?
Probably. I can't read because it's a bit...
Paul Singer, businessman. Oh, there's his picture. Hang on a second. His picture isn't showing on the screen. There you go.
Yes, that's the person, yes.
Okay. Excellent. I'm always looking for guests, man. Okay, so that's amazing. So he runs a hedge fund and he finances where you're sitting right now, Startup Nation.
We started it. Now we are lucky to have much more donors that joined and are supporting this initiative. But indeed, yes, we are.
Am I correct in saying that Startup Nation Central is like an incubator? So you help finance these startups. So Paul, as a businessman, he gets a piece of the action. Is that how it works?
Absolutely not. It's completely disconnected from his business and interest or any donors. And again, our scenario is not about helping the startups individually. We're not an incubation program. An incubation program has a portfolio. We're mapping the Israeli ecosystem of innovation, and we actually help the people from outside of Israel mostly to tap into Israel. So the companies who are working with are large companies, large corporates, large insurance companies, pharma companies, banks, retail. We're talking about large automotive manufacturers.
So why is Paul doing it? Why is Paul Singer doing this?
This is a question you need to ask our donors, people that believe in us. I think this is philanthropy. People want to look for impact and how to make the world better. And today, Startup Nation Central is a tool to do that. And to achieve it, I believe the specificity of Startup Nation Central is that we do it with a business DNA. Although we do want to make the world better, we don't do it. And you have a lot of great organizations that focus on education, on social challenges. And this is amazing, and they get supported by a lot of donors. And we crack the code, I believe, about how to help this happen and for the country to sustain and to develop and to connect to the world through a business activity, business-driven activity. And that's actually our specificity today.
I'm totally going to show my colors as a cheerleader on this piece, because to me, if you want to change the world, technology changes the world. And it's always been the same. I mean, the printing press, which Johann Gutenberg invented in 1440. So this is why I am much more an advocate. There's a lot of protests going on in the United States right now. And, I hear a lot of screaming and shouting. I don't hear any solutions, not one. I just hear tear down everything. And that's not right. It's right to build, it's right to innovate. And so getting back to Johann Gutenberg, 1440, now think, hundreds of thousands of years of barbarism, basically, in our history, just a bunch of, chimps with opposable thumbs, and eyes forward and big brains. And so we developed language. Like Yuval Harari, I would love to interview him on this podcast. I mean, that guy, I read Sapiens twice. I mean, it's an unbelievable book. This guy's just on cloud nine right now. Getting hold of him will be tough. We'll try. But, so it showed that, through language, opposable thumbs, fire, we developed into who we are today. But it took 100,000 years of barbarism. Now, right up until pretty much yesterday, Gutenberg invents a thing that can distribute knowledge. Right? A technology, albeit that it was carved pieces of wood that you would stamp. And then 200 years later, you get the Great Renaissance. You get Isaac Newton, right? You get Spinoza, right? I mean, you get Galileo. We understand the stars. We started navigating the world. Unbelievable, right? And then today, of course, with artificial intelligence. And look, that's like yesterday in history. So if we want to improve the world, we need to give the world technology. And this is really at the heart of this podcast, is look at the amazing technologies coming out of this tiny nation that also, by the way, likes to eat sushi and invent cherry tomatoes. Maybe we'll get into that for those that weren't involved. preamble beforehand. It wasn't recorded. So Paul Singer is going out there and he's basically saying, yeah, you know, tech changes the world. So I am going to connect people that need tech with you, right? With Jeremie. Because
so it's not going down directly to me, but we are again more than 70 people in the organization. The vision was more to create a platform, and when we created this platform, it was based on knowledge. And today, most of our team staff are data analysts, research analysts. We started by understanding what the Israeli ecosystem of innovation is about, and you cannot lie to your peers. So we're part of this community. We're not just external observers. Our teams are inside the ecosystem, and that's how we detect the dynamics, internal dynamics, and the most promising gems, entrepreneurs, and companies.
Jeremie, can I ask you to pause there? What do you mean by that? It sounds like what you're saying is when you said we participate in our own systems. Explain that.
We created an online platform called the Startup Nation Finder, and it's a database basically of every single organizations, of course, all of the 6,500 startups. Of course, Startup Nation Finder. It's an online database, and so we have all the 6,500 plus active startups in Israel that are mapped there. All of the VCs, all of the angels, all of the incubation programs, and all the multinationals with R&D centers in Israel. Everything is there. And if you scroll down from this first page, you will see some information about the trends which are connected real time with the information we manually enter in the database. You will not be able to find a startup that is not in this database in Israel. Since everybody in Israel is using it, we get pictures of the business cards the next day they get out of the garage. So right. that's yes.
Is this being, I just want to make sure that I'm capturing it for the audience here. My screen's a little tight. I just want people to see it. I might go back to the big one here.
Yeah, big one.
Cool. So explain this trending investments to me. What is this about? You've got cybersecurity, fintech, 507 companies in fintech worth 1.8 billion. They've done 65 rounds. And it's related.
They raised that amount of money. It's not the worth. It's how much they raised recently.
So these are all startups, yes? These are all startup nation, right? Okay, so they've raised 1.8 billion. By the way, people in the audience, Israel, Tel Aviv, Israel is the second largest, contributor to global venture capitals. Yeah, like number 2 in the world. Your GDP is 360 billion. What's mine in the US? And you're number 2. I mean, you guys are crushing it. I love that. Okay, so this okay, I'm kind of blocking my camera here a little bit. Right, I can see it right there. So this is showing me, there you go, I've got it. So I'm like the weatherman now, man. So this is showing me a 1.8 billion, 65 rounds, and they're related to insurance and trading and investing and blockchain. And why have you got them here? As a consumer, the audience, what do I do with this?
Okay, so this is actually automatically generated out of all the financial information that we individually entered on each companies in the database. So the tax system and the amount that you see, nothing was manually entered. It was calculated based on all the information that we have in the system.
Okay, that's what you mean by you're not hypocrites. You are building your own system to do this. So you're innovators yourself. That's what you meant.
Well, it's probably commodity technology to do an online database. But if you scroll up and you go to companies, you will see, and you scroll up and you press on companies, and you know what you choose, Eddie? You choose anything you want to, any tag or any topic, and the search engine up the page. Please type any tag, any keyword you'll want. Up the page, and we'll see how much Israeli companies do that. So anything, it could be very specific. It could be
the one everybody wants to talk about, or the one everybody hates to talk about.
Corona. You can. There is a tag, and you can see how much companies are directly tackling the problem of Corona.
Wow!
So 244 startups actually directly developing products that may have directly impact on fighting the Corona.
That's amazing. And there was something on the previous page that I liked the look of.
Okay, yes.
So that's, okay, we got that.
It's funny that you type Corona. Everybody's doing it. So.
Yeah, I know. We're sick of it, but we gotta. It's just like,
We gotta get rid of it. Yeah.
Can we end this? Yeah, exactly. So predictive healthcare analytics. That's kind of interesting. Cobwebs technology. Okay, so basically, these are the companies. So who are these companies? These are companies.
You can click anyone. Click Zebra or Teva is a big one.
Because they're not an innovator. Well, innovator. They're not a startup. This is the second largest company.
So, as you can see, we map companies. Of course, most of them in the database are not Teva or Checkpoint, but they still have business model based on scalable technology. So we don't map only startups, although most of them, of course, are startups. There are just a few dozens of them that are not, as you said, that became Teva. But if you scroll on any company, you can click on any company and you will see all the information. Click a small company. Click any of them.
Machine learning still cool. People like to talk about it. Okay.
Exactly. And so if you scroll down, you will see that you have all of the funding information, the entrepreneurs, and the markets that are connected. This company did not raise money, I think. So we have limited information.
Got it, but you've got it right here, right there.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Got founded, business model, employees. Okay, so then if let's say I'm in the US and I want to solve a particular problem. So you guys are solving you guys have solutions looking for problems. I've got a problem. So let's say I've got a problem, and the problem is I want to have a better communication system with my employees. What do I do with your website?
Two scenarios, okay? If you're a large company, you're like a Fortune 500 company. If you're like, I don't know, Wells Fargo or AIG or MetLife or Ford Motors or whatever, you can call us because we will actually give you for free, but direct services, because you can generate a lot of impact. You're a large company. So you don't need to bother with the website.
Does that happen to the big giants like the Wells Fargos? Do they call you? Those kinds of companies?
We host 2 of them per week. We have an average of 70 virtual meetings now, but it was physical visits that we organized, 70 per year. So what I'm saying I gave you now are names of people we hosted indeed. We hosted Bill Ford, we hosted Wells Fargo, the team, and we hosted the CEO of AIG in our building in Tel Aviv.
Let me ask you this then. These big companies, they know they are searching for a startup, some little 10-person shop. Does that not scare them? Because surely, a large company would want to deal with an IBM. Do you know what I mean? Like,
you're absolutely correct. So that's why large companies develop tools to be able to digest companies. And these are different stages. If you want to work with the CTO office, of course, you'll need to bring a very mature company with proven technology that already works with other clients. But they have now acceleration programs. For example, we now partner with Techstars and Stanley Black & Decker, okay? And Stanley Black & Decker, they work with Techstars for an acceleration of early stage companies. So we help them to identify companies that are relevant for their acceleration program, which is actually a tool they developed in order to identify companies with potential on the long term for strategic investments or for implementation down the road. So companies are now developing tools to be able to engage at different stages of the evolution of a startup. And we know how to adapt to any stage, any tool. They want to do core R&D. They have an acceleration program. They want to make strategic investments. They want to make a joint venture. They want to open an office in maybe all of the means or formats they may be interested about. Well, we can actually adapt and see how we can help.
Okay, so let's say I'm a company of 100,000 people in the US, and I found a particular technology that a startup company, I found them through your Startup Nation Finder. And so now I want to engage them. So you just mentioned that you guys, the Startup Nation Central, have let's say a roadmap or a journey of how they would integrate. How would a company do that? I'm 100,000 people.
So the scenario that you gave is, you're very lucky, because if you manage to identify one company alone amongst those 6,500, then you're very lucky, because it means you've been working very hard to find that one company.
Okay.
Because the website, the Finder, is more for the long tail. Because if you have 100,000 employees, then it's better if you come to us and we will look for those companies for you, and we will organize virtual meetings and iterate with you to find the right companies for you to engage.
Sure.
Of course, yes.
So let's say we found it. How are you going to marry a company of 100,000 people with a 10-person shop that's got a cool technology?
Well, if at the end of the day we matched you with this company, it means that upstream you told us that you're interested in such companies and you
Yeah.
have means to integrate early stage and you're willing to take the risk to early stage. If you told us we have a questionnaire and we talk to you before and we make sure that before we start to look for a company, it fits how you see innovation and how you can integrate in your company. We work with some large energy, very traditional companies. We work with companies, that do not even understand the keywords of innovation. And for those companies, of course, if you want to help them, you have to find startups that know how to interface and discuss with them.
Right.
So we will, yeah.
Give us a story. Do you have a good story, a public story that you can talk about where somebody integrated a small technology and it worked really well?
Yes, of course. We have many stories. We work a lot with, let's talk about AXA. AXA is the largest insurance companies in the world, okay? AXA, AXA, they acquired Excel in US, okay? So they are the owner of Excel, which is also big by itself. Okay. So it's the largest insurance company in the world today. And AXA, 6 years ago, came to us and said, we're interested by Israeli innovation. Let's focus on digital health. Because people may know cyber, and they know cyber is big in Israel. They may not know that there is more startups doing digital health in Israel than cybersecurity. It's a huge sector in Israel. Less funded, but a lot of startups and a lot of technology in digital healthcare.
More startups in healthcare than in cyber in Israel. Is that what
digital healthcare? In healthcare, of course. In digital health IT, mobile health, all of the artificial intelligence applied to health.
Okay.
Sensing technologies, etc. So we are like 4 years ago, and we hosted a visit for the head of global venture of AXA. He was interested, and they decided to open a presence in Israel. And then their CIO, their CEO, Thomas Berber, which is the global CEO of AXA, from then is coming every year, once in our building, spend a day or two in our building in Tel Aviv to meet with local HMOs and startups and hospitals in order to partner on focusing on digital health. And we started also to work with them on insurance and agriculture, insurance and other topics. So this is an amazing process because it started with just like a first interest and champion inside AXA said, oh, Israelis could be interesting. And it ends by having his CEO coming, global CEO coming every year. And the last time he came with the top 40 executives of AXA in the world, including the CEO of Excel, including the CEO of AXA Japan, and and they came to Israel, spent a day in our building to meet with entrepreneurs. And that's for us the kind of gradual, success stories that is the most important because people get exposed to something they did not imagine. It's exactly the point of your podcast.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And for those listening, it's like, go to Israel. It's amazing. You have to go, and then you get it. You can't get it from the news. Stop watching the news.
Oh, now you get 2 weeks of quarantine, so you better wait.
Yeah, exactly.
Come, but then once it's done,
that's right. Well, so the CEO comes, he spends a day or two in your shop. You set all this up, you curate the right, obviously beforehand, you will figure out the right people for him to talk to. And then tell us about some of the technologies that AXA have purchased and integrated. Give me some success stories and how have they done it?
So AXA, they opened a lab in Israel. And so I'm not sure what the kind of specific of AXA, if I can share the stories they have, because there's a lot of confidentiality. But today they have 15 employees in their lab in Israel, which is an innovation lab that connects with various startups in Israel. So this is again more than just one success story. It's many. It's the amount of technologies. I can tell you my story. If you want to talk one success story, I think it's a very good one because I know it and because it's a tremendous one.
Sure. Go for it.
Of course. Before I joined Startup Nation Central, I was the head of business development in a company called PrimeSense. And PrimeSense, like many companies, like Checkpoint, it may not be known by the wide audience. Although a lot of people use the products of PrimeSense because our primary customer was Microsoft, and we did the 3D sensing technology in the Xbox Kinect, the motion gaming game console. And so when people were playing like dancing or playing tennis or bowling in front of their video games with just gestures, the sensors that track the body gestures was PrimeSense technology. We sold almost 18 million pieces to Microsoft. So it was quite a good success story.
Oh,
And so that.
Wait, let me pause you there. So, okay, so you created this technology. Microsoft didn't buy you. They bought 18 million pieces of your product.
Yes.
This technology. Okay. And then you carried on developing independently?
So the fact is that we decided strategically to go in different directions and different usage. And so we worked on in medical devices in 3D sensors to reconstruct 3D. We had applications with iRobot to indoor navigation and people integration. We had applications and customers in many, many different fields where computers and robots needed to see. If you know this Pepper robot that you see with the screen on their chest, it's a SoftBank Robotics and now became a Japanese company with SoftBank Robotics.
A little toy.
The eyes of the robots, you have the sensors. Yes.
Yeah, it's like a little toy that goes around for kids, that thing?
Yes, it's not the kids. It's a robot you may find in the entrance of buildings. Or in trade shows. It's called Pepper SoftBank Robotics. You probably recognize Pepper. Pepper robot. If you say Pepper robot, you will see instantly.
Okay.
And so in the eyes of this robot that you may recognize, it's actually the small sensor that we designed. So our sensor was everywhere, but as usual with Israeli companies, it's exactly inside the eyes of this robot of the first versions, there were our sensors. So it's just an example of applications of having, when you wanted computers to see, people used PrimeSense. And it was like Checkpoint, B2B. So not known of the large audience, but in every product and everywhere.
Right.
So to continue the story, at some point, we got acquired by Apple. So Apple was looking for 3D sensing technology because they acquired us. I will not enter the details of anything, but we're widely, it's now widely known that if you know the iPhone 10, and you have a small sensors on the top of the iPhone 10, exactly. So the small area on the top where you see that it's called the Face ID.
Dots, yeah.
Yeah, the Face ID is actually a small Kinect, and it's PrimeSense technology inside. So this is developed in Israel in the R&D center of Apple, which is partially made of PrimeSense employees after the acquisition. So it's another big product that is in the pocket of probably maybe half of the people attending this or watching this show may have this PrimeSense product in their pocket. And again, like many other Israeli inventions, they don't know it's invented in Israel because it's not branded by an Israeli company. It's branded by Apple. It's branded by any other large companies. Intel, Microsoft, they all say that 2-digit of their revenues is generated by IPs. 2-digit percentage of their revenues is generated by IPs from Israel. So
that's really cool. So
as well, yes.
Really, yeah. A double-digit percentage of their revenues comes from technologies in their systems that were originally built in Israel.
Exactly, yes.
You guys need to put like a little flag on all this stuff, man. 18 million units in Microsoft. If somebody cracks open the box, there needs to be a little, right? Cherry tomato. That'll be the secret code. We'll put a little cherry tomato. As
yes, the idea is a small startup in Israel. We were fabulous. So we designed a chip, a semiconductor for the sensor, but of course it was produced in China. So we sold the reference design and the chip and the small optical sensors, but Microsoft paid to develop and manufacture the sensor itself because we as a small Israeli company, we could not ship to 18 million devices, but we shipped 20 million optical and chips.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's kind of like the same for any startup anywhere. What ends up happening is a big company ends up, buying them, the entire organization, either crushing them, using the technology, bringing them in under the umbrella, and then the original label gets forgotten, right? Such is the plight of innovators and people who really carry the world, my friend. That is amazing. What a great story,
Yeah, you
right?
know what? There is another person you need to invite to your show.
Who's
And
that?
that person is Dov Moran. Did you hear about Dov Moran? He's a good friend of mine. I will introduce.
I do know that name. Why do I know Dov Moran? Dov and then Mora.
Moran.
Israeli Innovation.
Yes, Dov today is the VC. Is an investor. I mostly played board games with him. Okay, so well, we talk. Yeah, exactly. That's Dov. So I talk little business and a lot of board games with Dov. Uh,
Okay.
Dov actually is recognized as being the inventor of the disk on key on the USB memory stick.
Really?
He
Wow.
invented it.
Really?
Yes, it's
Huh.
the first by a company called M Systems that was acquired by SanDisk, and now it became Western Digital. But the company called M Systems that he founded invented the disk on key, and that is the person that came up with the idea of what we all have also in our pockets when we need to transfer files.
Yeah. Now, did he work with you guys at Startup Nation Central at all? With that was
Of
before.
course, of course, we have a lot of partnerships. For example, Dove has a fund today focusing on a very new but extremely fast-growing sector, which is industrial IoT. All the smart manufacturing and the predictive analytics in supply chain and logistics, etc. And this fund is focusing on this topic. And so we partner and we co-organize events with Dove and his team. And he's an amazing person and he speaks amazing. And maybe you can get him on your show as well.
Certainly. I'll be tapping you up for an intro. Right after this. Okay, that's very cool. All right. So, and by the way, for the audience members where I keep referencing cherry tomatoes in the preamble prior to going live, guess what? Cherry tomatoes were also invented in Israel. I just think that was a funny one since I eat them in my salads all the time and need to pay homage to where they come from.
Yeah.
So talk to us about some of the technologies that have come through Startup Nation Central that are perhaps being used. Let's go for healthcare since we're talking COVID-19. Is there anything, what's changed for you? I mean, we've got to hit this COVID-19 conversation, right? So we're currently
Yes.
recording for people watching the archive on the 4th of August, 2020. So yeah, what changes have you seen? What innovations do you think might be helpful for the world moving forward in this new normal?
Perfect. That's a great question. The first thing we did is that while people were stuck home watching TV shows and movies during 2 months almost, depending on their locations, we decided to create an initiative called Coronatech Israel. And there's a website called coronatechisrael.org.il, I think. Coronatech Israel, you'll find it easily. And this website is actually a resource center for anyone looking for technologies related to Corona, but also for startups, investors, and different partners to find their way exactly. As you can see our logo at the top left, we initiated this product. We were supported by the partner, if you know Wix, another great success in Israel.
Yeah.
Startups.
Web.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, right.
They designed the website, of course, that's their core business. And so we created a resource center listing events, online events, of course, and investors, grants, challenges faced by medical institutions, and of course, startups in Corona. And we started focusing, of course, on what everybody wanted to focus on, which is of course, work security and testing people and breathing machines and stuff that were like immediate needs. And over time, and that's actually should answer your question, we saw that it's not really about the immediate needs. It's mostly about the consequences of Corona, which are real in all of the businesses. And so we see that it affects all large companies around the world, see their dependency, how they depend on China, of course, but also on third parties, on international ties, and so everything needs to be recalculated. And we see, for example, a huge revolution in the supply chain.
Yeah.
Because companies now, they understand that they can't afford to be dependent on to end to end. They have, once people were looked for scalable ways to externalize some costs, now they are trying to secure themselves by finding solutions to detect anomalies and to create visibility on what is essential for them. And we see today Israel as a future leader in the supply chain 4.0, in the fourth industrial revolution, which is happening now, which is the data revolution on top of machinery. Yeah. And then this information, this huge amount of information needs to be leveraged, and that's where Israel is very good at. And so we see today Israel as a future leader to guide this challenge of the world, to use data to predict and to anticipate and to reduce the effect of dependency.
Okay, there's so much I want to ask here. So I think that you give a description, because I'm not actually as familiar with it as I think you think. When you said 4.0, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. You know, which age?
Okay, so let me explain the 4.0.
That, and then, so I don't lose my train of thought, once we've understood the foundation of where we're standing, then let's get some examples of people whose supply chain was disrupted because of dependence, let's say, on China or wherever, due to coronavirus, and how that might be solved. So what's that stack again? Remind us of that.
Okay. The stack, it starts with the revolutions, industrial revolutions. And the world has been through 3 known industrial revolutions, which, steam and electricity and robots. And today, the 4th industrial revolution is the revolution that is about the macro. Today, you have your telephone is a computer. Your car becomes a computer. Your factory or your plants or your buildings became computers. And you need to have an overview of what is happening in a factory, okay? And the factory is an endless market, because the entire world is a factory, is manufactured. So in order to challenge that, companies don't want to renew their devices and to buy new, very expensive machinery every too often. So they can add a layer of data and sensing and information in order to extract and get visibility, and to also do predictive analytics and to do optimization and cost reduction. And all of those efforts can be done once you have technology that enables you with AI to understand what is happening in your own factory.
Yeah, right.
So that's what we call the 4th industrial revolution, Industry 4.0. Get ready to hear more about it. Of course, and sorry, I will finish with that. Cybersecurity is very central there. And there is a specific sector called Cyber for Industry 4.0.
Is there? No kidding. Okay, so yeah, right. So if I were to recap this then, industrial revolutions, steam engines, that's the first part of it. I suppose maybe that started around England, certainly a European thing. And that was 1850, roughly, I would imagine. Okay, yeah, we're throwing up that's very French.
It's the end of the Westerns, cowboy era. We start to see trends, and it means it started.
Yeah, exactly. And so people invest in infrastructure. They don't want to have to rip and replace that all the time. In infrastructure, we're talking about train lines. You don't want to rip and replace that, right? That's a big deal. That's not like computers. We toss those out the door every 6 months. And so, right, you've got this infrastructure. Then the next revolution, the next industrial revolution on that is to extrapolate the data out of that, or to essentially make it more efficient. I'm actually missing some steps there. The first one was the creation of all this stuff. What was the second and third before we get to the 4th?
No, I think so that's a question about, I don't want to fail in front of an audience about the 3 industrial revolution. I think the first one was steam. The second one was electricity, maybe, or robots. And then you have or maybe the second one was chain walk. How do you call it? The fact that I don't remember the definition of the 3.
Yeah,
exactly.
I've got a lot of charts here, and they're way too small to show on this program. Okay, but the point is, what you're doing is you're using existing infrastructure in the 4.0, and you're saying we are going to use machine learning to extrapolate information that is going to be useful, so that we can augment the current infrastructure that you have. Got it. Right.
We have companies in Israel that enable you to detect that a machine will fail 1 month ahead, because it detected some very small signs that actually no person could detect without data. And they create patterns, and they see that every machine that failed generated that kind of first signal a month ahead. And so now they can detect ahead, and so you can actually anticipate problems and solve them before they even happen. And that's called predictive analytics. And predictive analytics, a third of global investments in the world in predictive analytics are made in Israel today in the industrial sector.
Really?
So huge.
Yeah, that is huge. Okay, and this company that's developing that technology, that's within your 6,500 on Startup Nation Central's Finder?
Yes.
Really? That's incredible. Okay.
Do predictive analytics, industrial applications, you'll find it you'll find all of those companies.
So do you have a story of a organization that has come to you saying, we've had this supply chain impact because of coronavirus? Can you help us? I'm wondering if there's an example, or do you?
I know. So yeah, of course, in general, we are very careful about giving examples about our customers because we value confidentiality, and especially because anything related to coronavirus is in progress, and because no company, especially no large companies, can integrate the technology within 2 months. So there are things happening right now. Yeah. Of course, we'll wait until those companies agree to advertise the successes before we talk about it by ourselves. But they are on the way, and there are some amazing things happening. But you just can't talk about it yet.
Sure. It's all good. Hey, we'll get you back 12 months from now. I think this podcast is very. I'll keep doing this because this is fascinating to me, my friend. Okay, fantastic. All right, we're coming up on an hour, so I'll probably wrap fairly soon, even though as I say, we'll have you back because this is amazing stuff. Give us a fun, obscure invention. I mean, I love the cherry tomatoes, the amount of sushi restaurants, all these kinds of things. I thought it was neat. But give us a more of an obscure invention that people perhaps use but have no idea where it might have come from.
The digital printing process was invented in Israel by iTech and by actually a company acquired by HP, which called Indigo. And those companies, they created the digital printing processes.
What is the digital printing process? What is that? Like
the digital printing, the fact that you can print it, you mentioned how it was printed with wooden stamps once. So right. It was, and then today we're printing in a different way, not with inkjets, with digital printing. And the original digital printing technologies were designed in Israel.
Do you mean 3D printing?
No, actually 3D printing, don't get me there because I may have a lot to say there as well.
Oh, good.
A global leader in 3D printing in Israel.
Printing anything that's from digital. So from digital to the physical world.
Yes, you don't actually, yeah, so that's what I mean, yes.
Oh, that's bazillions of documents globally should pay
homage to that. Of course. This is another, digital printing as we know it today.
Wow.
The first stone, just like the first firewall, was in Israel. I thought about something that could be very big scale if you were looking for something like that.
Yeah, that's pretty big, man. No wonder HP bought them, of course, printing shop. All right, then, you know what? I'm too tempted. 3D printing. I mean, it's amazing, right? So one of my kids, she just graduated high school. She's doing robotics. And so as part of this robotics class now, they make robots and they do the robot wars. Have you seen this? It's on.
Yes, it's amazing.
It's amazing.
I've been participating in one of those competitions back long ago, yeah.
You did?
Yeah, the robot fighting, yeah.
Right. So this is what my daughter's been doing in a grade 12 year, right? And so she's going on to do biotech and international business relations at university now. And that was a big influence on her life, is creating something from scratch. What blew my mind is I went into their lab at school. It's all 3D printers. They're making their robots exactly as they want to make them through these 3D printers.
Yes.
Just blew me away. And then I started asking around the neighborhood for the kids that are really involved in it. They've got 3D printers at home. Like,
yes.
Wow. So that one really went far ahead of me. You said you won't stop talking. Start talking. What about 3D printing?
So, because one of the leading companies in the world that design 3D printers, professional 3D printers, is actually Israeli. It's called Stratasys.
How do you spell that?
Stratasys, Stratasys. Stratasys.
There it
This
is.
is, you can find it in the Startup Nation Finder, but it's a fairly large company today because they design multi-million dollars 3D printers. And this is an Israeli company.
Okay. Okay.
Based in Estonia, and they are a global leader. And there is no match for specific applications of for their products. And if you want to Google images of products printed with Stratasys printed objects or something, you will see a lot of amazing, and you will not imagine, they print in colors with different materials, transparency. They print objects that are impossible to make if you were not printing them as one piece. It's an amazing, amazing company.
Okay, I'll bring that up as we are chatting. Okay.
And actually, we have our VP marketing that just started early August, so like yesterday, working with us. Our job before was VP marketing of Stratasys. So I'm saying hi to her.
Wow. Yeah, I will show some of this here. Look, this is amazing. You never know what's going to come up on. Yes. So, I mean, new from New Fins, but new headphones, right? But I'm seeing some.
People print prototypes and they print all kind of items. Anything is printable.
I mean, prosthetics, right? Prosthetic face, prosthetic foot.
Yes, and they actually, I have in my office a shoe that is printed as is with all of the materials being different. So medical applications are huge.
Incredible.
So that's a flagship company based in Israel called Stratasys. Another one.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Very cool. Let's end on this point then. So you mentioned you grew up in Paris. Je suis français aussi, alors très bien. You have good taste in food. And then you moved to Israel as a young man. And you mentioned at the beginning of this call, you said, you said, I think your words were as a Zionist, but not religious. Did you say that at the beginning of the call?
Yes, I said
now,
that.
most people have no idea. I've worked for an Israeli company for 12 years. I get it. Most people have no idea what that actually means. So explain that to me. Why was it important to you to move to Israel? So what does that mean as a Zionist? And then you also mentioned not religious. So that's interesting because most people, of course, think of Israel being a religious country.
Yes, so the vast majority of Israelis are not religious people, okay? It's a secular country at its most, the majority of the people. More than 20% of the country are indeed the typical religious people that you may imagine, but it's not the majority. And I'm more attached to the history of the Jews. And I saw this country as hope for the Jewish people to remain on the long term. Of course, I don't believe that all the Jewish needs to come to Israel, but as an individual, I thought that, and I've been facing a lot of challenges in France in my life, and I actually wanted to do something for the people, for my community. And I think a lot of people in US, they rely to the concept of community, and the community is important. It's important to feel home somewhere, although you can visit the world and be friends with the entire world and be best friends with anyone from any community. But I would say the Jewish people around the world, they are linked somehow, and Israel is in many cases a place to feel home. But that as simple as that is just to feel as on the historical point of view. I knew my history. I knew the history of the Jewish people or the history of Israel, and I just felt connected to it. And this is in many cases something you can't really define, right? It's something you feel. It's just, you can't define it. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but it's not about religions. It's about feelings.
That's good, man. It's beautiful, man. It really is, because you said Israel's a secular country. Most people don't know this. In fact, Israel, I've heard, has the second largest gay pride parade in the world.
Yes, it's an amazing one. And if you want to come to Israel, come during the gay parade, and you will be astonished by the amazing creativity and support it gets.
Yeah, exactly. It's one hell of a part. I was there during Purim for a North America. Yeah, you'll love it. I was crazy.
Like Halloween, yeah.
That's right. It's like the Halloween, but it's more for grown-ups.
Yeah.
So at the checkpoint office, and we've got way over 1,000 people, I think maybe 1,800 people at the office there. And I just happened to be, holding meetings there when I was there. And they said, oh, you got to come dressed up. So I thought, oh, what should I pack? So I just packed my British rugby shirt. I don't know. This is what I do at Halloween. I was the biggest loser in the office.
Don't make that mistake.
Crazy. It's like, and it's all dressing up. And so I thought, oh, okay, I'll go out and party tonight. And there's a wonderful, we stay at the Indigo Hotel whenever we're in town there. And there's a big park. I think it's called the Tel Aviv Park nearby. I go running there.
Park Ayavkon.
Yeah. So then somewhere in that park that night, there was a big party, man. It was like 4,000 people in this field, DJs from all over the world. I'm like, I want to do Halloween like this.
True. It's for grown-ups. You're right. It's right. You don't have kids going on the street to ask for sweets.
No.
You'll just have fun as grown-ups and kids, of course. Kids are welcome to any party in Israel. And
they are. And I'll say this. Here's a beautiful anecdote to end on. So, as I say, I'm very familiar now, and I love Israeli culture, and it's good fun, et cetera, et cetera. So I taken my family out there, of course. So my youngest daughter at the time was, I think, 10-ish years old, so kind of young. Now, I live on the East Coast of the US. My children grew up in Canada. We've been hiking in the Rockies. They've swum with sharks in Belize. We've been to Disneyland 1,000 times. One day over dinner, I said to her, what's the favorite vacation we've been on? I love to travel, right? I'm a nomadic guy. She goes, oh, Dad, it was Jaffa. Now, we stayed in Tel Aviv, but she referred to Jaffa, which is a city just south, right? It's just south of Tel Aviv.
And it's part of Tel Aviv municipality, Jaffa.
Yeah, it's basically the same. It's just one big city as far as an American goes. And so I said to her, really? I'm like, you've been to Disneyland, you're 10 years old, your favorite holiday is the Middle East? Like, why? And you know what she said to me? It was a beautiful observation. I've told all my friends this. She goes, oh, it's because I got to stay up late and play with all the kids in the street. And it made me think, because we put our kids to bed at 8 o'clock in North America, right? It's like bedtime. We eat at 5. and yet, of course, in the Mediterranean culture, it's so warm over there, you tend to eat later anyway. So people are eating around 8, 9 o'clock at night. And we were in this beautiful streets of Jaffa, these unbelievable restaurants, right? Out in the streets, with lights, and the little Israeli girls running around. And my daughter, and live music, of course, my daughter was just dancing with them in the streets. Couldn't speak Hebrew. They couldn't speak English at that age. They were very young, or at least a little bit. And that was her favorite vacation. And it's because for her, it was a sense of freedom, right? She wasn't being locked into bed at, 8 o'clock at night and, lights out. It was, everybody just party, have fun, very safe, right? And I just thought, wow, very, very interesting. And most people are super surprised by that. Jeremie, my friend, this was great for me, right? So it's good for you too, my friend, and that's wonderful. We will wrap our session by telling people that at the beginning of September, we're going to do another one of these. We've already got a few guests lined up. We're going to choose which one it is. Stay tuned. Checkpoint is happy to sponsor these. It's not about Checkpoint. It's just about cool technology coming out of this little nation that has invented stuff that most people have no clue when they're eating their salads, that they should pay a little bit of homage to the inventors. All right, buddy. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and we'll meet again soon.
We will meet again soon. Take care, Jeremie, and hopefully in person. All right. See you, buddy. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.